This episode of the Party Loaded podcast is proudly sponsored by Audible.com. Check out their awesome catalogue of audiobooks with over 180,000 titles to choose from. And be sure to grab a free audiobook on us and support the show by visiting audibletrial.com/endgame.
Let's party.
Well, hello there. We've been expecting you. This, of course, is Party Loaded, the video gaming podcast. My name is Luke Ratelek, and welcome to episode 87 for Wednesday, the 19th of July. It's a dark and stormy... No, it's not really. It's probably a little stormy, but not super... Actually, it is dark outside. I guess we can go with that. Hi, everyone. This is Jan. This is Christian. We're all here to talk about video games. Let's do it. So,
That's
welcome back, Christian. We have a couple of people missing tonight, of course. So, long-time listeners to the show will know that Ollie and Mimo are not here. But that is okay, because, Christian, your expectation tonight is to make up for two people.
Yes.
You think you're up to it?
The last couple of times I've been on, I've been Shadow Mimo, and tonight I'll be playing the part of Shadow Mimo and fusion with Shadow Ollie.
That sounds horrifying.
Oh dear. I'm scared.
Yeah, I don't know how that's exactly going to work. You have to be all nice and caring and shit and like super salty at the same time. It's like you're going to be a two-faced kind of monstrosity. I don't know how that's going to work. Anyway, That's cool. It's been a little while since you were on, and I think you actually now officially, as of tonight, hold the record for most often returning guest on the show, which is cool.
Booyah!
So
nice.
Just pipping V at the post by one episode.
Done something right.
My plan is proceeding.
It's subletting.
You want to be here?
Why wouldn't I?
Absolutely. So let's do some catch up then. Let's actually chat about what stuff you might have been playing since the last time we heard from you on the show itself. So what's going on, man?
So I think the last time I was on the show, I was deep into Persona 5, which I did finish a while ago and was absolutely fantastic. And since then, I haven't had too much time to sort of dig into many more larger games because I've been quite busy with university stuff. But I have been playing The Last Guardian, finally getting around to playing that.
Nice.
And loving it. It's fantastic. Some people said it seemed like it was a PlayStation 2 game running on PlayStation 4 and it had some janky controls and camera issues. But I think it's fine. And I think that it fits right in with the Shadow of the Colossus Eco sort of vibe. And and I've been playing lots of Hearthstone still. Made Legend again last season, which was nice.
Yeah, I'm not gonna race you again. That's cool. I'm good. Once is enough for me.
That one I kind of fell into where I didn't have my heart set on it, but then I just found myself creeping up the ranks, and I got to like rank 2, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I can just keep pushing it, and I just tipped over the edge on actually the last day of the season.
Nice.
But that was just happy circumstance. And I've actually been playing a bit more Pokemon GO since the recent update where they rejiggered the gym system. I've been getting back into that, going for my daily walks and filling my Pokedex. That's been fun.
So tell me about that, and tell me about the raids in particular, because I know that when they launched the new sort of gym battles and the raid system, there was a pretty high cap for people getting into that, and if I recall correctly, it was you had to be level 30 in the game to actually take part in the raids, which for anyone who doesn't know Pokemon Go, that's pretty high. Like you need to play a bunch.
That is crazy high. They have lowered it now. So I actually didn't know at the time when they first launched it, they had planned on lowering it after a few days. So I jumped onto the update and wanted to do a raid, and it's like, your level's too low, and I'm like level 27, and I thought, if I can't do it, that's quite a crazy barrier for entry.
Yeah.
But they did lower it, and I think it's lowered to level 20 now at the very least. So they have opened it up a bit more. I think they might have been concerned about like testing it, kind of like a stress test, where they didn't want too many people jumping in at once. But they have lowered it now.
I guess the barrier for entry in a certain way is going to be just getting absolutely curb stomped by everybody of a higher level than you with good mods anyway. So Although I guess the player level is not directly translatable to the monster level. It's just that you'll tend to find people with a higher quality collection at those higher ranks, I guess. But yeah.
Well, with the raid battles, they're PvE, so it's a random Pokemon of a certain like rarity that spawns at that gym site.
Oh, of course.
And and then everybody from all three teams can combine. It's basically like, instead of being a strong Pokemon with CP level 2000, it's like CP level 30,000. So you can only chip its health down a little bit each time you battle it. So it takes a combined group effort to bring it down. And then once, as a community, you can have up to 20 players per raid. Once you finally defeat it, everybody gets a chance to catch it. But it is like a PvE thing. So maybe they don't want level 1 people jumping into the raid and not contributing and then being able to catch it. Maybe that's another reason they've got the barrier for entry.
Yeah, probably be a bad experience for them if they do that. Turn them off the idea of doing it again. Yeah. So theoretically, if you happen to find one that's in an isolated position and nobody else around to kind of help with the raid, can you just keep sort of getting smashed and coming back and chipping away at it like that, or does it reset once you actually sort of cease the encounter?
You could do that, but there are actually two different levels of raid boss strength. So when the raid is announced on the map, there's an egg that floats above the gym, and if it's one color, you know that it's going to be a raid boss of a certain level, and if it's another color, it's going to be a tougher raid boss, which is also a rarer Pokemon. And so the lower level ones, it is feasibly possible to solo them. If you are already quite a high level player, you could repeatedly bash your head against it and bring it down eventually. But if it's one of the higher level raids, it's going to be impossible to do it solo, because they last for, I think it's, once the raid starts, you have half an hour or possibly an hour to complete it. So some of them you could never do by yourself.
Yeah, that makes sense. The timed event was something I didn't realise. So, okay, that certainly adds a wrinkle to it. And I'm going to take a fairly broad assumption here that when they actually finally put the legendary events out, they're going to be those tougher level of raids. I can't see them being the smaller ones.
People have actually data mined the app and found references to a third level of raid.
Oh.
And everyone's speculating that third level of raid will be the legendary level. But that hasn't been implemented yet.
Okay, so probably next to zero chance that you're ever going to solo one of those things. So
I seriously doubt it.
Yeah, which
what I'm hoping is that the legendary raids will be extremely tough, but a longer time. So even if it was like the raid lasts for 12 hours, or 24 hours, so you've got enough time to hear about it maybe online where it is and go to the location rather than having to stumble across it. Yeah, if it's going to be something as cool as a legendary.
Yeah, absolutely. And if they were going to make them available for a longer time period, maybe they make the occurrences of them slightly rarer as well, so it's more of a featured event at a particular location. That makes a lot of sense to me. I think that's a great idea.
I have been surprised how many raids there actually are. So every day I work in Subiaco in Perth, and every day there's 3 or 4 raids around Subiaco pretty much at all times. So they're actually quite a bit more common than I thought they were going to be. But you do need to spend an item to join in the raid. So you get a raid pass. So kind of like when you would need to put like incense or the lures at the Pokestops, you have like a expendable item that you need to use to gain access to the raid.
And of course you can spend money and buy bunches of those, I'm assuming.
Of course.
Yes. Yeah, of course. Makes total sense. Nice. All right, well, it's good to hear about a bit of Pokemon Go. I mean, I still fire up the app every now and then. Jem, I believe you deleted it from your device, didn't you?
Oh, I think it's there. I think. I can't remember.
Not sure, yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't played it in a solid... It'd been like 6 months at least since I'd played it at all.
Yeah.
And even when they brought in the Gen 2 Pokemon, I only sort of dabbled back into it.
Yeah.
But now that I'm finding myself a little more motivated to play it.
Oh, yeah, it's deleted.
Yeah. I'm very curious what's going to happen to that thing when they, potentially finally introduce trading to the game. Because that seems to me something that could break it wide open in terms of it being maybe too accessible for... catching some of that stuff. Like, people might lose interest because it no longer becomes quite the challenge it was. So, yeah.
I'm worried that trading would break the game, because it's like collecting your Pokedex is such an important part of it, because the actual battles themselves aren't that appealing. It's not like the core games where you're training up your set of Pokemon and battling them. It's really all about getting the Pokedex entries. And so with trading, you could just trade a Pokemon back and forth just to complete the Pokedex entry, and it would feel kind of hollow, I think, and it could not be good for the game.
Agreed. Actually, you know what it sort of reminds me of in a weird kind of abstract way is actually the Diablo 3 auction house debacle when that first came out. Yeah. So similar sort of reason, obviously, because it made a ecosystem where people were basically able to attain items that should be, hard to obtain solo player efforts from other people, and just made the whole thing a lot easier if you were willing to spend the cash. So, yeah, interesting situation. And we know how that one turned out, so not great. Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, other stuff. Now, Jam and I got the opportunity to fire up something a little bit fun, which kicked off, well, technically this morning. And I was actually going to hold off doing this until I had a decent block of time available for it, but then I weakened at the last minute at about 1 a.m. and jumped in. So, yeah. Jam, how are you finding the Destiny 2 beta?
I am liking it. So I've only done the initial mission.
Mm-hmm.
And dropped
Homecoming,
into
I'm pretty sure it's called.
Something like that?
Yeah.
And dropped into one online game which went very poorly for me. But yeah, I'm loving it. It feels like Destiny. It's utterly gorgeous on my PS4 Pro. So beautiful. I suppose there's no real spoilers, but maybe
really.
skip ahead 2 minutes if you don't want to know what happens. When you work through that first mission and end up on the tower, I found that instead of fighting the guys that were dropping, I was looking for the soccer ball to see if it'd survive. But yeah, I'm a bit rusty, and I last played on Xbox, so I was getting used to the control scheme a little bit. But I really enjoy it. I played Hunter, love that class, but I'm going to have to cycle through and get the feel for all of them again to see what I feel like playing this time around. And I'm looking forward to doing the strike with you guys.
Yeah. We'll tee that up in the next evening or so. That'll be good fun.
Yeah. But Nathan Fillion is hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
And then, having Captain Mal and Zoe there, and also dude from, what's the show? The Wire?
Oh.
Just the voice acting is splendid. So good.
Oh, that's going to annoy me now.
I was just sitting there watching. I know, I can't remember names. Yeah, thoroughly entertaining. Quite funny.
Yeah, I've probably spent all of about just under an hour in it so far. And, like you, I kind of spent a decent chunk of that trying to reorient with the controls and the game. But I got to say, Destiny 2, just like Destiny was, when you actually start running around and engaging in the gunplay of that game, it is like putting a warm, comfy glove on because it's so responsive. It's the thing that I loved about the first Destiny.
Yeah.
As a shooter, it just feels goddamn great. It's just really smooth.
It's fun. And that's half the problem I had jumping into PvP was me figuring out what gun I wanted to use in it. So I'd try something, I'd die. Try another one, I'd die.
Yeah.
I was trying to remember what my favourite type of loadout was and getting the hang of it again. I was like, did I used to go hand cannons? I can't remember. Oh, I'm not that accurate anymore. So maybe I should jump back to the auto rifle. But yeah, it's great fun. And I'm just a little frustrated that I didn't get to customise my character because I'm a dude. And I was looking forward to customising my character.
Well, you can't take your character forward after the beta anyway, so it's not going to be
Yeah,
a
but
huge
I wanted
issue.
to see options. What hairstyles can I have? What tattoos can I have?
Yeah.
Show me, tell me.
Yeah. You can do a couple of the dance emotes and things like that, but yeah. No, I actually, when I was loading up my Bungie account, went back and saw the character that I ran in Destiny 1, which I think they're being ported forward. I'm pretty sure they are. My gear will be absolutely crap, but, whatever.
I don't think they are being ported forward, actually. No.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah, they said there's going to be some recognition of your previous achievements, I think they said, but not actually just direct porting.
Okay, well, I guess it doesn't really matter either way, because, I played during the first Destiny release and played a Titan class, and I actually didn't continue when they released the Taken King or any of the stuff after that, so I've missed out on a huge chunk. Yeah,
me too.
Yeah. I just played vanilla and that was it.
Yep. So one thing I have noticed immediately, which contrasts with my experience from vanilla, though, which is a really, really good thing, is that the opening mission for Destiny 2, which, for anyone who's caught the footage at E3, you're probably familiar with a bit of this, the sort of run that you go through on that first mission is very detailed in terms of other entities and other action going on around you. I always felt that in Destiny 1, when you're doing a lot of those missions, you felt quite isolated, like you were in areas where there was, sure, like a ton of enemies, but you were always off in the wilderness or sort of out, in the wilds somewhere where there was really not a lot of other stuff to interact with to sort of push the narrative ahead. But in this one, because you're literally at the tower and the rest of the, I don't know if they call it the Citadel, but that's kind of what it appears to me. It's all crumbling down around you. It's being attacked. There's basically enemy forces trying to occupy and take everybody out. And as you're running through, like, there's a bunch of other characters that actually make appearances and sort of rescuing other fleeing citizens, or basically trying to get themselves out of burning bits of rubble and stuff like that. Cade pops up and he's shooting a bunch of dudes behind a door, and that kind of stuff felt real different to Destiny 1. Like, there was never that story tie-in with other characters being present.
I think that's, time will tell if that continues throughout the game, but that's definitely just part of the intro. It's setting the scene, it's the story, it's why you're going to get taken away, and everything's essentially going to refresh. It explains the origin of the second iteration. Yeah. So it's not likely to be that way the whole way through, because that would be a lot of storyline content that they'd have to build into each of your missions. But
I think that's okay. Yeah, I don't think that they need to have that kind of thing throughout the entire game, because, Destiny as a game is, once you actually sort of get going, it's entirely built on the premise of being able to rerun missions again and again and again. That's kind of the core gameplay loop that they have.
Yeah.
And I guess a mission like the Homecoming mission, with all of the different character cameos and, speech elements and that kind of thing, you don't want to be doing those bits again and again and again, because that would get quite repetitive, I think. So having it just appear in a couple of them maybe is good, but not in all of them.
And then you'll start to loathe certain lines. To speak, like, that they're in the walls or whatever the hell.
Yes, that exact line, that it's in the walls, that got on my nerves for even the small amount of time I played it.
Dinklebot, god damn it.
Oh, no, but it's good fun. I'm looking forward to jumping in again tonight after we wrap up that. The open beta starts in a couple of days, so we've got a couple more days before the general public sort of floods in. But
I'm gonna have to get good.
Yeah. Well, they had a little bit of a rough opening hour or so, just due to the number of people trying to connect, which is pretty standard for a beta like this. But since that point, everything seems to be going reasonably smoothly. So,
is that when you logged in? Because that was like some absurd hour this morning.
Well, I tried to log in, like, it went live at 1 a.m. our time, and I tried to log in pretty much immediately, and it was about 10 minutes before I could actually connect. Wow. I kept on getting a certain sort of error. Destiny's really good with their error messaging, actually, and how you can look it up on their site. So I got an error a couple of times that I think was called termite or something like that. I looked it up, and they basically just said, just restart your program. So I did that a couple of times and then eventually connected. But, I think you have to expect this kind of uncertain nature of connecting, like, at the first minute. You get lucky if you get in.
It's pretty good if they resolved it that quickly.
Yeah, I think so.
Promising.
So, yeah.
It's going to get smashed, though, when it opens up.
Is the beta running on PC as well, or is it just PS4?
It's PS4 at the moment, and Xbox, I believe, is a couple of days after. I'd have to check the schedule. PC's not happening until next month, I think.
Okay.
Yep. So, because the PC game release is a good month and a half after the console release. So
I did not know that.
Yeah.
There you go.
I know PC's out on the
It has made our decision somewhat.
Yeah, absolutely. PC's out on the 24th of, I want to say, October. And PS4 and Xbox, I'm pretty sure, is week 2 of September. So, yeah.
So PS4 it is.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. It's actually one of those games, like, even though it's a first-person shooter, I don't mind playing it on console because of how good it feels. So,
it is, like, it does seem to be tuned for controller, definitely.
I think it's fine, yeah. And if the game has taught me anything, it's one of those games you will go where the rest of your friends are, because you want to be able to play with them, so for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's good. Speaking of promising, got a bit more time in with Wolfenstein The New Order, which I won't talk a bunch about, but there's one particular part that I thought was pretty awesome that I just wanted to share with both of you. Now, anyone who's obviously played the game when it was first released will know all about this, and it's probably old news, but I did not. So it came as a nice little surprise. So, if you remember back in the days where I was alive and you were not, probably, I don't know, the original Wolfenstein 3D, which kind of, really kicked off the FPS genre as a whole, that game is beloved by many and actually features in Wolfenstein The New Order. So you actually, after the first few missions, you get to a point where you basically are at like a rebel base, like where the insurgents that are trying to, take the fight back to the Nazis are sort of set up this hidden little hole where they're trying to rally their forces and build some tech and that kind of thing. And you go down there and it, furthers the story a little bit, gets you set up for your next mission, and you do sort of come back there a few times. While you're there, though, there's a couple of little rooms that have beds in them, and you can actually sleep in them, which doesn't seem to perform any real function. But there is this one mattress, like in an upstairs attic kind of area, that looks all beaten up and moldy and lumpy and shit. And you go up there, and there's a poster on the wall, which is like an image from the original Wolfenstein 3D game. And I saw that, and I was like, oh, cool, that's a nice little nod to the past. And then I saw the mattress, and as you hover your cursor over it, it says, have a nightmare. And I'm like, what? So you don't just sleep on this thing, you actually have a nightmare. That sounds bad. I'll try it out. So jumped on, and basically what happens if you actually lie down on this mattress, it actually ports you into a mini version of Wolfenstein 3D within the game. So you get to run around the passages. It's kind of like a weird hybrid, though. Like, it's all of the graphics of Wolfenstein 3D, and all of the assets are sort of two-dimensional in, like, a 3D space. Like, you can kind of run past them and almost spin them around on their axes. It looks really funny.
It's trippy.
It's weird. It's super weird, yeah.
Yeah.
But you are 3D. You are exactly as you are normally in the game, sort of with your pistol sort of running around. And all of the hidden secrets and everything are in the exact same locations, and I really stunned myself by realizing that I remembered exactly where they were. But yeah, I played the shit out of the game when I was a kid. But yeah, and then you sort of wrap up and you come back out of the dream, and it doesn't really seem to serve any purpose other than that, apart from being a really cool homage to the old game. But I was impressed. It was cool.
I think it's fantastic that it's actually built into the game's story, like the lore, where it's BJ having a flashback to the original events of like Castle Wolfenstein. So it's like a cute little continuity of him actually having like a nightmare about the original game. I think it's wicked.
Yeah.
Did you play the recent Doom game by Machine Games?
Shit, yeah. But I suspect I know what you're going to mention next. I actually skipped that bit altogether, and I haven't seen it yet firsthand. So yeah.
It's actually, I think almost every level in Doom has a hidden classic level in it that you can go back to, and it's the same style of thing where it's like the mesh of the modern. You got the modern gun in your hands, but the environment's the original Doom. Yeah. Same sort of thing. There's
definitely a lot about this game that feels like Doom, actually. Like, I think I said this last week. It seems like the first prototype of this new kind of feeling FPS adventure game. Yeah, a lot of similarities. But the reason why I think it's great. I didn't catch any of that stuff in Doom because I was so wrapped up in the actual game itself that I didn't even bother sort of, searching every nook and cranny. I was too busy running around, like, rocking out to heavy metal and just blowing the shit out of demons.
Yeah. The music in that game is awesome.
Oh, I love it. So good. Yeah.
I actually want to give a quick shout out to, there's a YouTube channel that I subscribe to called Writing on Games, and one of the recent episodes was about Wolfenstein The New Order, and he spent some time talking about how clever some of the writing in the game actually is, and how surprising it is for a franchise that started just as blowing away Nazis. There's actually some clever techniques and story elements used in The New Order, so maybe check that out.
Oh, definitely check that out. That sounds good, because I'm thoroughly enjoying the story. It's there's not been a single level so far that hasn't delighted me in some way. It's been really good. So,
have you met the character named Jay? Have you?
He's
one of the Resistance guys. It's like an African American guy.
Yes, I think I have. Yep.
Do you know what his real identity is?
No. Don't tell me. Don't tell me.
Okay, I won't tell you. I'm not sure if they actually reveal it in the game, but it's pretty funny.
All right, sweet.
Yeah.
No, I don't think it'll be too much longer before I finish this thing, but I'm not rushing it. I'm in that really nice, comfortable mode with it at the moment, where I don't feel like I have to blast through. So, yeah. But I don't know. We'll see what happens with Destiny stuff this week, whether I get distracted by that or not. Speaking of distractions, Jam, what were you doing as well this week?
Oh, I jumped into the Alpha 16 release for 7 Days to Die.
Aha. So how's that game looking at the moment?
It doesn't look all that different. I had to restart from scratch, so I don't think I'm at the point where I can see a lot of content changes, and I wasn't on for very long. But I found paint, so you can paint stuff now. I saw wolves, and I ran the other direction. Yeah, I haven't played much. I need to play a whole bunch more, but I immediately remembered why I love the game. It's just so intense.
Yeah.
It's just so much fun to survive in that game. I mean, I died straight away. I popped up in some biome, and there was a funky-looking one next to me. I'd kind of forgotten what that meant. Took 2 steps, radioactive. I was like, oh, okay, turned around, but it kind of gradually fades back out once you're in the biome, so I couldn't get out before I died.
Yep.
So, yeah, relearning some stuff, but still so much fun. The crafting mechanic's fun. Killing zombies is fun. I jumped on with my brother, and we just had a ball remembering how to play the game and checking out the map. There's different building types that I haven't seen before, all sorts of stuff. So I'm really looking forward to getting a lot more time in to that again to see all of the fancy new changes.
Yep. I would love to play some PvP in that game. I think that would be real fun.
Of course you do.
Yeah, well, I know more from the perspective that we've kind of done the survival thing already. Like changing it up a bit for the next adventure in there would be something that I'd be keen to do. Just to.
I love that you say we, but like we set up a collective area as a group, and you went off and made your own base.
Yeah, I was trying to do something for the group by putting an outpost next to the trading post, and you all just ignored it and went in the other directions. That was fine. Hoarding your rocket launchers and not actually using them on zombies. What the crap kind of plan is that? Anyway.
Well, that's for the... Yeah. Oh, I saw some new zombie types. What did I see? I can't even remember. I think there was some cheerleader stuff and big fat guy in a Hawaiian shirt. Oh, and a big fat lady. Oh, she was terrifyingly scary.
What they need to do in that game now is add a new zombie type, which is an homage to Mr. Romero. That would be a really cool addition.
Oh.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we found a farm, and it's near a couple of towns, and we're trying to fortify that farm area. So we've got corn for days.
Nice. All right, well, at the risk of talking about cool fun games all night, let's actually talk about some different cool fun games. So in the gaming news of the week, we had some bit different stuff this week. Disney actually had a big week because they were holding the D3 Expo, which I actually have never really paid a huge amount. Did I say D3? D23, I meant to say. I haven't played a huge amount of attention to the Disney Expo each year, but of course we're in a world now where they own just about everything that we loved as kids. So when you're talking Disney Expos, you're talking not only video games, but of course now we've got everything Marvel, we've got everything Star Wars, a bunch of other bits and pieces too. So you tend to pay attention to that. So as far as video games, amongst all of the Avengers of Infinity War and Spider-Man and all sorts of other stuff that they had on show. Of course, new Star Wars footage, but too many distractions. Anyway, games. They did show some stuff from Kingdom Hearts 3. So now, Jam, being the only one of us that has any experience actually playing a Kingdom Hearts game, I should say. So what stuff actually would appeal to you out of that?
Well, Toy Story.
Mm-hmm.
They're including the Toy Story universe for the first time, and that is 100% going to get me playing this game. So I played Kingdom Hearts 1, and I absolutely adored it because the Final Fantasy Square characters were in it, which I loved, and then all of the Disney, which I adore. So that was the best thing. I grabbed Kingdom Hearts 2 when it came out, and I lost interest so fast because there was so much exposition, and I didn't get to go visit Disney Worlds quick enough. And I don't know, I put it down one day, didn't go back to it.
Yeah.
So I hope Kingdom Hearts 3 doesn't do that. We'll see. But they're also going to have the Tangled universe, which is a movie that I love very, very much. And Big Hero 6.
Big Hero 6 is such a great film.
Cool. That would work so well as a world in Kingdom Hearts.
Seems like
I can
perfect fit.
Yeah, I can just picture it.
I'm wondering how accessible Kingdom Hearts 3 is going to be as a first-time entry into the series, whether or not they're going to tone down some of the complicated story elements or still go full-blown into it.
Well, in terms of the cast, I think it's going to be more accessible than ever because when you think about the current generation going through a lot of the sort of kid-level Disney stuff, I mean, your old favourites like, Donald Duck and Daisy Duck and, Goofy and Pluto and all those sorts of characters, you don't really see them around anymore. Kids these days will recognise Toy Story. They'll recognise Big Hero 6. So, yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting one.
That's not going to be the turn-off. It's going to be the story elements.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It seems like a
about-
franchise that's kind of got tripped itself up in a tangled web of spin-offs and
Yeah, it
half
got
sequels and
so complicated.
Kingdom
so
Hearts
quickly.
2.5 3D remix, Dream Drop Distance, like
Yeah.
all sorts of crazy titles.
And it's just twisty. The mechanics of how God, what are the little critters called?
I don't know.
Damn it!
The only thing I know from Kingdom Hearts is Keyblades, and that's about it. So.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, the Keyblades. No, the little black bad guys, like little dark. Oh no, I can't remember. Anyway, the way it all works and the way the characters have interacted in the past, like it just gets a bit complex. I hope they take it back to its roots, simplify it, and just let you have fun traveling as Sora with Donald and Goofy through these weird and wacky worlds. It was really cool in the footage they showed for the Toy Story content. They looked like they were sort of part Lego-ish toys, so they were toy versions of themselves to fit into the toy universe, which was really cool.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing more. Very exciting.
Sweet.
I wonder if
So,
they'll throw in any Star Wars or Marvel stuff in there too, now that it's all owned by the same people.
That would be epic.
I don't know. I think there's certain boundaries that won't be crossed in that regard. Sort of similar to how I don't think you'll see amiibos of that kind of stuff because of the different licensing deals. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a weird one. Like, remember when Disney Infinity was a thing? Like, there was certain things that they didn't do in Infinity. No, it wasn't Infinity, actually. It was Dimensions. Because Lego Dimensions, of course, Lego has done Lego Star Wars in the past and all that kind of stuff. But because Disney Infinity had the Star Wars rights, they weren't able to do Star Wars figures for Dimensions. So there's still some weird licensing barriers there. But yeah, I don't know. Infinity's gone now, so who knows? Got no idea. Yeah.
Oh, they're called Heartless. Yeah, they're called
Heartless?
Heartless. Yep.
Yeah. But speaking of the other stuff like Spider-Man and Star Wars, there was a little bit in terms of video game reveals for them. Nothing massive, just a little bit more gameplay footage. So we got a little bit more of an inside look at how Spider-Man on PS4 is going to have the combat work in a few different instances. They reused some of the footage that we saw at E3 with the fight against Mr. Negative and his goons and that kind of thing, but a little bit more of the street battling. And a little bit more footage of the Star Wars Battlefront 2 single-player action as well. So if you want to check that out, just search for Disney D23 Expo and you should be able to locate a little bit of that stuff. So, but speaking of big overseas events, Christian, Evo was a thing.
Yes.
So tell us about what you caught from that one.
I'll just quickly breeze through it. It wasn't too much. So for anyone who doesn't know, EVO is the Evolution Fighting Game Tournament. It's basically the annual most prestigious fighting game tournament hosted in Las Vegas. And they do mix in some announcements along with the actual tournament itself. So this year they announced a new Street Fighter EX game. So Street Fighter EX was the first Street Fighter game that went 3D. There hasn't been a new title in the series in about 15 years. So that's going to be interesting to see. It's got some crazy obscure characters in there, like crowd favorite Skullomania. He's basically just a man in a skull outfit, skull bodysuit. It's pretty cool. They announced the character Abigail for the second season of Street Fighter V. So a lot of games these days release their characters in batches, in seasons. Abigail is from the Final Fight games.
Yeah.
Been like a bit nice crossover.
And he's friggin' massive.
He's huge. He is enormous, yeah.
So veiny.
I think someone said, I heard today, he's like two Guiles stacked on top of each other.
That's a good, yeah. He's even got the tiny little like buzz cut hair on top too. They announced Trunks for Dragon Ball Fighter Z. So Dragon Ball Fighter Z is the crowd favorite upcoming fighting game at the moment. So everyone in the FGC is absolutely in love with this announced game. It's taken all the wind out of the sails of Marvel vs. Capcom Infinity, because for ages Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was one of the top games, and then Capcom announced Infinity, but they've gone with a change of art style that people aren't happy with, and some of their choices for the roster are really unpopular. So there's no X-Men in there. They're pushing the Marvel Cinematic Universe characters more. So people aren't too happy about that. But then Dragon Ball Fighter Z came along and has won everyone's hearts. And they announced Geese Howard for Tekken 7, who Geese Howard is a character from King of Fighters, a series that hasn't got its own title in many years. And yes, another little crossover. There seems to be a lot of mixing of fighting game characters these days.
Yeah. I do enjoy watching the fighting tournament sort of footage. Similar to how I like watching the Good Games Done Quick stuff every year. There's usually some good footage of people at the high levels competing, which is cool to watch. So
Yeah. There tends to be some funny GIFs that come out of Evo. They call them the Evo moments. Like the best Evo moment this year was like one of the top level matches, and basically one player got the other guy into an infinite combo, so he couldn't break out of it at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could see the players on camera, and the guy who was stuck in the combo just like puts his fight stick down, takes out his wallet, takes out some cash, and just like hands it to the other guy. Just like, and like washes his hands. Like, yep, I'm done.
that's awesome.
That's good.
Hilarious.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that was really about it for Evo.
Nice. Oh, well, Evo aside, looking back at slightly older stuff again, a few episodes ago, I think it might have been 3 or 4 ago at this point, we mentioned that Atari had announced plans of bringing out a new console called the Atari Box. And just a small update on that, there's actually been the first images of the thing doing the rounds this week. It actually looks kind of sleek, I got to say. It's not a bad look at all. It's a very small looking console. Yeah. I think... I don't know, size-wise, it looks to be similar to the Switch to me. Not too far off it, but not a sort of docked console like the Switch is. It's something that looks like it sort of sits almost like a large double-sized portable hard drive, or the front end of a PS4.
Looks like an alarm clock.
Actually, yeah, it does look a bit like an alarm clock. It's funny you mentioned that. Yeah, it's going with the old sort of similar look of the original Atari 2600. So they've got that ribbed kind of black sort of frame, and the front of it is quite noticeable as well. It's going to have either a glass option or like a wood grain design, which again is a bit of a throwback to what the original system looked like. They seem to have, there's two like SKUs of it, two versions. One looks like the Atari 2600 and one looks like it's a throwback to the Atari Jaguar with like the black and red. Yeah, it's a very bright red too. Super neon looking red, yeah. But I mean, I think we can all assume that they're not going to do something crazy and try and jump into the market with, PlayStation 4 and Xbox at this point. They're probably going to... I mean, the thing that appeals to me seems like the most likely alternative here, where they're going to kind of go after some of that market that maybe might be interested in like a Super Nintendo Classic Edition, but the difference being that this is a console that's going to continue to have a life after that point and have, other games that you can put on it, as opposed to like a fixed list and that's it forevermore. So
I find the whole thing bizarre.
It is strange.
Just the existence of it is bizarre.
Yeah.
And like, because it was only a couple of years ago Atari released the Atari Flashback, which was like a mini style system. It's like a self-contained Atari that had just the classic games loaded onto it. But that was before the Nintendo did it, and so it wasn't as popular, didn't get as much attention. And with this one, they seem to be saying that it's going to have modern games on it too. And I don't know, I think there's a catch around the corner.
Yeah.
There's going to be something not quite right about it.
Well, I think that probably one of the more obvious ones that we can look at being a possibility is that if they are looking at putting new games on this thing, there's got to be developers willing to make those games. And, why would someone pick a console like this that maybe doesn't have as many, household units out there as opposed to just putting a game on Steam? So
my prediction is they announced that it's actually an Android box. I bet that it's going to be running off Android, kind of like the VR did.
Interesting. That's an interesting theory. Yeah, could end up being something like that. I mean, they're still banking on nostalgia to a large extent, so people will, look at the design of this thing and they may actually want to rip out the insides and just, put a Raspberry Pi type solution in there and just have it looking like a cool little unit, but... who knows? There's going to be hobbyists out there that'll do all sorts of cool stuff with it. You got people modding the mini NES and the mini Super Nintendo and putting like thousands of games in those, so God knows what they're going to do with this thing. But yeah. Anyway, so bit of weird stuff from Atari. Let's change gears severely and jump into some PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds news. Big record broken this week. So PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds has actually become bigger than Grand Theft Auto 5 for the most concurrent players at any one time on Steam. So now it's not the highest ever, There's a bunch of games that still sit above it on that scale, like Fallout 4 and, of course, Counter-Strike Global Offensive being a couple of them. But Steam sort of keeps track of the peak player counts for each of the games on the platform and ranks them in like an all-time top 10. And the current all-time peak player count for GTA 5 was just over the 360,000 mark. And Battlegrounds hit 382,000 plus just 4 months into their early access period. So that is insane for a game that hasn't even properly been released yet. So
They do have the advantage of this being the sole platform, though.
that is true.
True.
Yeah.
Because GTA 5 is on consoles. You can even own it on PC, not through the Steam client. I would never have been counted in the Steam Peak player thing because I purchased it directly through Rockstar. So
Yeah, that's a good point. Hadn't thought of that.
yeah, so I mean, it's still epic. They're still number 4,
Yeah.
which is amazing.
It is
amazing.
Crazy. So next up on the list is Fallout 4 at 470 plus thousand. So yeah, they got a little while to go before they beat that. It could happen though. I wouldn't discount it totally.
Oh yeah, once it's released, especially once the customization is available, I think there's just going to be so much going on with that game. It's going to be incredible.
Yeah. Well, do you think that the numbers will be impacted at all by their plans to apparently, in the next update, they're actually going to add first-person only servers?
Oh god, that's going to be terrifying. I'm already so bad at situational awareness.
I think it's
My
fantastic.
God. It's going to be so tense. You're not going to be able to, you can't just shoulder check. You're going to actually have to pop your head out and be like...
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely good times to use first person at the moment, like to gain a tactical edge, but being in that all the time is about as bad as trying to do like a GTA race in first person all the time. It's
You're going to have to be so careful and so conscious of how you're situated and how visible you are from any direction and exactly how easy it is for people to hide from you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, Christian, we haven't actually spoken about this, but have you been playing Battlegrounds at all? Have you dipped in?
I have, yeah.
Yeah.
I got hardcore into it for a good while and just so addicted to it for ages. I love it. I'm really looking forward to the first person servers too because I have a preference for first person, but I acknowledge that there are definite advantages to the third person.
Oh, yeah.
So sort of bringing everybody down to my preferred level, I'm keen for that.
Well, we should hook up and play some games. Absolutely, it's
definitely, especially with the new map coming out too.
Ooh, shit,
Yes.
yeah. Yep. Well, I tell you one person who probably won't be playing on the new map, and that is the Twitch streamer by the name DrDisrespect. Man, he's had a pretty bad week. So this guy's pretty much the number one Twitch streamer for Battlegrounds, or was, until he actually got banned from the game this week for basically violating their terms of service and killing friendlies. So he basically, the way I understand it was that this guy, he plays a character when he's streaming. Like, it's not him so much as like the heel that he plays. You know, he amps up his behavior quite a bit to be an absolute jackass. That's kind of the part he plays. But even so, like in this particular instance, apparently he was with a squad of 4. And they found a vehicle that only seated 3, so he turned his gun on his squad mate and capped him so that they could actually get into the car and run off. Now, that sounds hilarious, but it's actually against the rules of Battlegrounds. Like, it's written into their guidelines or whatever that you are not allowed to sort of shoot friendlies deliberately. It's something they frown upon quite seriously. And so after he did that and got banned, he actually took to Twitter and then started basically threatening violence against... Brendan Green, like player unknown himself, and I'm sure that part of it was done, tongue in cheek as a bit of an entertainment thing. Again, his character, as opposed to doing anything serious, but he was taking no shit from it.
Yeah.
I think especially once you take it on outside of like the game into social media, that's a different realm, and that's where the I'm playing a character thing that doesn't fly. Like. No, it was not cool.
I completely agree. 'Cause, I mean, even if he's joking, the number of other people who may not interpret it that way is still a potential risk. So, yeah. Yep. That's, anyway, it looks like he got what he deserved, entertainment or no. So, anywho. And last thing on the list tonight, just a really quick one. New Nintendo 3DSs have wrapped up production. So, This is something that, of course, a lot of doomsdayers, when it comes to the role that Nintendo Switch plays in the 3DS sort of market, going, oh, look, it's happening already. They're focusing on Switch and 3DS is no longer a going concern. No. This is just the new Nintendo 3DS. It's not even the 3DS XL. It's just one particular SKU that was launched, I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago now. So
About 2 years ago, yeah.
Yeah.
And they have just released the new 2DS XL.
Yeah, I've heard very mixed reviews on that thing. Apparently the hinges are in quite a frustrating position for the way you hold the thing in your hands. So haven't heard great things, but I mean the design looks nice. It looks.
Yeah, I think it looks nice, and I like it. It at least has the clamshell design, unlike the 2DS, which was the one that you couldn't actually fold. Which that was good for kids, but I definitely prefer the clamshell if I'm going to buy one.
Definitely, as long as you're not going to rip it open and break hinges and things, which are very hard to do.
Yeah, that's concerning. Yeah.
I had a couple of people I knew who broke the original DS. But the 3DSs, I don't think I've seen one that's had a lot of problems yet, which is good. But you really don't need the 3D feature unless you're really gung ho into that kind of thing these days. Like a lot of the new titles that are coming out don't even have 3D support. So I don't know if the new Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon will. I mean Sun and Moon did, I believe, but I don't.
In battle, not on the overworld.
True. So I mean, really, who cares? It's one of those things. It's like the 3D TV fad kind of went and gone. Yeah,
I think it's funny that the 2DSs though, they still have the twin cameras on the back of them, so you can still take 3D images for 3D photos, but you can't actually view them in 3D on the device itself.
That's weird.
But it's just like a vestigial leftover feature.
That is super weird. All right. Anyway, so that is that. All right, so for something a little different tonight, we thought we'd tackle a topic that, as it so happens, we've got a little bit more expertise sort of maybe available tonight than we typically would. And I kind of want to just say, like, Jam and Christian, you two, and Ollie as well, but he's not here, so he doesn't count tonight. You guys watch a shitload of anime and general sort of Japanese,
Guilty
programming. Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely do.
I've always known both of you to be kind of sort of heavily into that. And I mean, I've watched my fair
it's only
share.
the last couple of years for me.
Well, true, but the last couple of years you've made up for lost time. Come on.
It's true. I have a Crunchyroll subscription. I have an Anime Lab subscription. Yeah.
Both. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the first sign of an addict, I think. We can.
Yeah.
It worked really well on the PlayStation, by the way.
Yeah. Nice. Well, now, given that you're into that kind of stuff and entertainment of a Japanese variety, it is only fitting that we sort of plug your brains into the topic we're tackling tonight, which is all about JRPGs. So Japanese role-playing games. The perhaps fairly confusing genre that a lot of people don't really understand fully, I don't think. And I may include myself in that too, because it's something that I've thought a great deal about, but I've noticed that, especially researching for tonight, there still seems to be a lot of disagreement around some of the aspects of this subgenre, I guess we could say.
Definitely.
Yeah. So that's probably a good point for us to start. So, like, JRPGs, how do we actually define a JRPG? We know it's a fairly large genre that a lot of people pay attention to, and we often hear games referred to as JRPGs, and that's a big positive for people who are into this kind of thing. But what the heck is a JRPG, and where are the limits? Where does it just become an RPG or a Western RPG? So, what do you guys think?
Well, I mean, you can take the pedantic route and say it's an RPG made by Japanese people.
That's my definition.
But I think that it's not very practical when it comes to actually defining games. I get that technically that's true, but I think there are certain features. There's a feature set that's common in Japanese RPGs that isn't exclusive or exhaustive, so not all games need to have these certain features, but Japanese RPGs tend to have some of the features.
Now, my opinion on that kind of labeling, like it has to be made in Japan or by Japanese people, it strikes me as a very similar argument to looking at international cuisine. Like, you don't necessarily say that all Italian food has to be made in Italy or by Italians, for instance.
Perfect, yeah. I love that example.
Yeah.
It's so true.
But it's definitely done with a particular style in mind, and with certain conventions that they adhere to when they're making it. So, yeah. that would be how I'd look at it. Jan, what were you going to say besides
Not much.
Yeah.
I clearly haven't thought very deeply about this.
Do you want me to run through some of the features that I consider
Go
part
for
of
it.
the formula? So I would say that Again, this is just typical, but not always the case. JRPGs tend to be party-based, so there'll be a group of characters, whereas Western RPGs tend to focus on the main character. There's often item and inventory management in JRPGs. Classical JRPGs would have turn-based combat. Mm-hmm. That's definitely changed over the last 10 years, but still considered quite typical for the genre. They tend to have open world exploration with side quests. Mm-hmm. Battles tend to be random encounters rather than scripted encounters. There'll be a random system, like Pokemon. And I would actually also say the last thing I had on my list is thematically, JRPGs tend to err towards spiritual themes. A lot of them involve crystals and gods and fate, and there's a lot of Japanese animism and Japanese spirituality that can get wrapped up in JRPGs.
Yeah. A lot of cultural things, for sure.
Yeah.
Would you say that typically JRPGs, the progressive storyline is linear more so than not?
Yeah, definitely. Western RPGs tend to have a focus on branching paths and being good or evil.
Yeah.
Whereas JRPGs tend to have much more of a linear path. They might have alternate endings. So there's some of the most popular ones, like Chrono Trigger has, I think, 13 multiple endings, and games like Shin Megami Tensei do have a dark path or a light path. So there are definitely exceptions there. But generally, they tend to be more linear.
One thing I've noticed about a lot of JRPGs that I've played is that they seem to be very, very story-driven, as opposed to what I find tends to happen in Western RPGs, where they're a lot more character-driven when they're Western. But I don't know. It's probably not an absolute rule by any means, and I don't think any of these are necessarily absolute rules by any means, but just seems to be a trend that I've picked up on quite a bit. But the art style is another obvious one. There's a lot of anime style sort of animation and art style in JRPGs that you tend to see. So
for sure, yeah.
Yeah, it really comes down to, the sort of comic book style and, anime and things that you'd see coming out of Japan. One of the interesting cultural things, too, that I've noticed, and this is probably not as much now as maybe it used to be, is depiction of gender roles tends to be... Yeah. Let's say, quite old school, is one way to put it. Which is, it kind of is, without painting too broad a brush, it's a very Japanese, view of the world from what I understand. So, very traditional, household roles and not as modern as perhaps what some of the Western world sort of stories and characters might be willing to adopt. But
it's very, very common in JRPGs to have the female shrine maiden type character. There'll often be a female character who is very sort of submissive and quiet and spiritual.
Yeah, who may get accidentally naked.
Yeah, Yuna from Final Fantasy X is a classic example of the maiden type character. Yeah, she was great. Yeah, they can be good characters, but they do tend to sort of fit this stereotype of being the quiet, sort of obedient maiden. Yeah, definitely problematic in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, which you do or you don't enjoy. I mean, some people are going to have pretty strong views about that sort of thing. For some people, it's just going to fade into the background and you won't even notice a lot of the time. Yeah. And I must admit, even though these days I'm sort of hyper aware of that kind of stuff in the general world as we know it, when it comes to JRPGs, I've played them all my life, I kind of forget about it to a certain extent and forgive it without even giving it a second thought, which I don't know. I kind of feel bad about that, but by the same token, it's a game and at some point you kind of just need to enjoy it. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you typically see a bit of a range too. It's not, I mean, if every female character was that character, it would be an issue because it would be bizarre. But when you've got a decent mix and it's just one of the ones thrown in, it's less of a thing and more of a, there's a variety here. Some extremes, to be sure, but...
we're talking about how they tend to be focused on an ensemble cast. So you do have, you've got Yuna in Final Fantasy X, but you've also got Riku and the one that wears all the black stuff.
L. It begins with L. I can't remember her name.
Lulu?
No,
Lulu, yeah.
Is it Lulu?
Lulu's awesome.
Yeah, with all of the belts on her dress.
That
dress was cool.
There's probably less distinguishing features between some of the main sort of characters these days too. You almost look at a couple of them and you can't even pick their gender anymore. It's
the sort of Bishi style male characters, I call it, which is like the pretty boys.
Yeah.
They tend to be very, like, you look at the cast of Final Fantasy 15 and women like love those characters. There's some pretty attractive men in that group, I have to say.
That's it. Give me the Super Saiyan hair with the motherfucking gun blades any day.
yeah.
And then you've got the animal sidekicks too.
Oh, yes.
Yes, you got
They make an appearance everywhere.
Definitely.
Tons of them, yeah. All right, well, now Christian sort of put the idea to us tonight that you were going to sort of test us a little bit, perhaps, on our JRPG knowledge. So, what are you cooked up for us?
It's half test and half just excuse for me to mention fun trivia about JRPGs.
Good.
Totally cool with that.
Good.
So it's true or false as well. So you've got a 50-50 chance. So
Still lower your expectations.
So I've just got a few pieces of trivia about JRPGs that I'm going to read out. And some of them are true, some of them I have made up, and some of them I've modified off real world things. And I'm just going to ask you guys whether you think they're true or whether you think they're false. So pretty standard stuff.
True.
You ready to start?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Cool. All right. First one. In Persona 2 Innocent Sin, Adolf Hitler appears as the game's primary antagonist, leading an army of Nazis from Antarctica.
I'm gonna say false, but I
False?
have no idea.
Oh,
Luke?
my God. I'm going to be a contrarian and say true, but I suspect that maybe it's a partial truth. That's my guess. But yeah, I'll go with true.
That one is true, completely true.
Hey.
So
Oh, wow.
Adolf Hitler, the man himself, didn't die according to Persona 2 and fled to Antarctica. And yeah, you wage war against him and his Antarctic zombies in Persona 2. When they ported it to the PSP, they actually did censor it a bit, and they just changed his name to Führer and gave him a pair of black sunglasses.
Well,
Okay.
Congratulations, Christian. You've made me immediately want to play Persona 2. That's hilarious. Oh, shit.
Okay, next one. So while numbered Final Fantasy titles typically don't share the same universe as each other, Final Fantasy 13, Final Fantasy Type 0, and Final Fantasy 15 all take place in a shared universe called the Fabula Nova Crystallis. True or false?
I'm going to go false.
I'm gonna go true on this one.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's false because I think that only 2 of the titles have a shared universe. And I think I know one of them, and you didn't mention it. So yeah, I'm going to go with false.
This one is false.
Damn it!
So Final Fantasy 13 and its direct sequels, 13-2 and Lightning Returns, they do share a universe, and there is a thing called the Fabula Nova Crystallis that was announced by Square Enix, and all of these games are part of it, but it's shared themes. So all of these games have shared themes, but they're not all a part of a shared universe.
Nice.
Oh.
Makes sense. Yeah, there
I'm
was a
doing
couple
terribly.
of different numbered ones that shared the same universe as well, I'm sure. Just can't remember which ones they were. They were earlier on.
I know Tactics, Final Fantasy Tactics shares a universe with one of them that I can't recall.
No, it wasn't Tactics. I think it was earlier on. It wasn't 7. It was... I'll have to look it up later. But yeah, anyway, that's cool to know.
All right. Next one. Chrono Trigger contains a hidden ending where the player can meet the game's development team. The developers will play tricks on the player, such as placing you into an unwinnable boss fight and pretending to delete the save data. True or false?
Oh, shit. I hope it's true.
No idea. Yeah, that would be really cool if it was true.
Yeah. Oh, my God. I'm going to go with false because it almost sounds too good to be true.
False?
Yeah.
And Jams?
I'll go true.
This one is true.
Yes!
It's the hardest ending to get in the game, and you get taken to like a dream world where all the game developers are there, and you talk to them, and they do all different crazy game-breaking things like pretending to delete the save data, which is pretty scary.
Holy crap. That sounds awesome.
I can't believe I've never heard of this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have failed utterly as a SNES gamer, and I've never played Chrono Trigger.
Well, you'll get a chance if you get the mini.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's not on there.
No, it's
Damn
not
it.
on there.
I've got it.
it's
I've
not
got
on
it
there.
on my DS Lite, but I've not played very much.
Yeah, that's right. It is available on DS, so I probably still can hunt it down. And that might even be
Yeah.
a better experience as well. So, yeah, we'll do that.
Okie doke. Next one. The Square Enix developed 3DS exclusive Bravely Default outsold multi-platform Final Fantasy 13 worldwide, despite the developers initially believing the game wouldn't even be viable for a global release. True or false?
I'm going to say true.
Oh. No, that doesn't sound right to me. I'm definitely going false on that.
Interesting. This one is false. but based on a slightly true thing. So Bravely Default didn't outsell Final Fantasy 13, but it did outsell Final Fantasy 13 Lightning Returns, the third one in that series. Yeah,
wow.
Which I think is pretty cool. It's a really, really
Yeah.
good game. If anybody likes the more old school style JRPGs with turn-based combat and like the job system from Final Fantasy V, Bravely Default is fantastic. It outsold Lightning Returns.
Nice. Well, I didn't
That's
play either,
cool.
so sure. Yeah. That being said, I did hear a lot more about Lightning Returns at the time. So yeah, cool. All right, fire away.
Yeah. All right, so last two ones. In the original Dragon Quest for the NES, a female NPC offers the main character a puff puff in exchange for gold. This term comes from a Japanese onomatopoeia for basically motorboating a woman's breasts.
Okay, I want to say true.
Oh man,
Luke?
I'm gonna say true too.
Yeah, both go true?
I can't say false on that.
This is true. There's a hidden character that offers a puff puff, and the screen goes dark, and it gets really weird. And yes, it means motorboating.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
And that character actually became a recurring gag for the rest of the series, and it was removed from all Western localizations until Dragon Quest VIII was the first one to actually have that come West.
Wow.
But in one of the later games, they do try and play a bit funny with it, and they have the puff puff scene, but then they cut back to reality, and the woman is actually just rubbing two slimes on the main character instead. So yeah, it's pretty weird.
It reminds me a little bit of Mr. Libido from Yakuza Zero. Yeah, I don't know if he appears in any of the other Yakuza games, but I wouldn't be surprised if he does because the dude is fucking hilarious. So
Good stuff.
nice.
Alrighty. And last one, true or false? Final Fantasy was named as such because Square was on the verge of bankruptcy at the time, and director Hironobu Sakaguchi saw the game as a final attempt at success, a Final Fantasy.
True.
Luke?
No, I'm going to go false on that. I think there was another reason.
See, you sound pretty sure on this one, Jams?
It sounds. I believe I've heard this before.
You probably have heard it before, but it is
But you
false.
changed something? Damn
No,
it.
it's just this is a widely propagated myth. I
So
tracked
the
down
internet has fooled
Yeah.
me. Good one.
tracked down multiple sources to verify this because I was curious about it myself.
Wow.
But straight from Sakaguchi-san himself, that is just a tale that was told by somebody in a gaming magazine in the 90s, and it was never actually true.
Cheeky shit.
It does sound like one of those things that people would sort of have fan theories about the naming convention of a game for a while, and if they don't actually have it confirmed by the developer, I'll just make up whatever shit
Yeah.
they think fits.
Yeah.
It romanticizes the franchise a little.
Yeah.
In truth, they originally wanted to call the game Fighting Fantasy, but
Yes.
because of the single-player role-playing game books of the same name, they had to change it to Final Fantasy.
Yep.
Wow.
Fighting Fantasy books, which were actually made by the guys who went on to form Games Workshop. Way back in the
really?
day. Yeah.
Oh.
Absolutely. I
didn't know that.
It was two of the three original founders of Games Workshop that were behind the Fighting Fantasy books, I believe. I can't remember who they were. It wasn't Brian Ansell, though. It was the other two guys.
Ian Livingston?
Yes,
is that
Ian
one of
Livingston
them?
was definitely one of them.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. There you go.
Wow, that was cool, but I did poorly.
I guessed my way to victory without knowing shit.
Yeah, I
Wait,
actually
that was
didn't
a
keep
race?
track. I have to admit, I didn't keep track of how many points you got, but I hope you had
I-
fun playing.
I think I got 2.
Oh man, I wasn't sure about anything except for maybe that last one. I had a pretty good feeling, but yeah,
I'm so bad with trivia.
that was awesome.
But that was
Yeah.
cool.
I think that whole range of questions and the weirdness that was in amongst that pretty much sums up the genre pretty effectively. So
Yeah, I thought it was a good example of some of the weird and wacky stuff that can be in JRPGs, like Adolf Hitler and Puff Puff.
yeah.
oh no.
Yeah, we should because this is a whole other weird kind of world, and we're trying to remember shit from potentially our childhoods. I think if you're gonna run that quiz again for anyone else, Christian, you should call it the Total Weebcall quiz or something like that.
Total Weebcall.
Oh dear.
That's glorious. I love it.
Nice. What do you guys actually love, sort of game wise, in your JRPG sort of libraries over time? Like, what are some of your favorites? Let's do a quick sort of reminiscing of ones that have really stuck with us over time. So, Jan, let's kick off with you. So, what sort of JRPGs do you know and love from your early days of gaming, or recently?
So, I'm pretty sure the first JRPG I played, unless I've got my chronology back to front, was Azure Dreams on the PlayStation 1.
Mm-hmm.
I've spoken about it before, but this is this cute little game where you're in this rustic village and you basically venture out into this big mysterious tower that's near the village to fight through the levels, which are like little dungeons. And you defeat critters and you get loot and everything. And then you go back to your village and you share the wealth and you support it and you help them develop the town. And every female character you interact with nearly in the village can become your girlfriend. So you're basically just trying to catch them all. And it was really cool. And my sister and I played the crap out of it years and years and years ago. It was fun because it mixed that sort of little town, getting to know everybody, and helping sort of build it up element with the fighty slashy, okay, how many levels high can I get this time thing. So that was really cool. And I always, every now and then, I look up the price on eBay and I think, should I? But I haven't caved yet. But around the same time-ish, Final Fantasy VIII was when I got into the Final Fantasy series. And I love that game. That's just nostalgia, like, times a million for me. I know my siblings still remember the sound of the combat music and loathe it because it was always playing in the background whenever they wanted to do something. And I don't think I ever actually finished it for all the many times that I restarted it after having gone away from it for a while.
So,
but I love the
That can
characters.
happen with Final Fantasy games for sure.
Yeah.
I was going to
Guilty
say
of that myself.
Final Fantasy is probably one of the more widely known JRPGs, and I'm not surprised that all three of us have got some experience with the franchise. But before we sort of go any further, I'm actually curious if we can all compare what our favorite Final Fantasy games are. Like if you had to pick one or two.
Well, so I've played 8. That's probably still my favorite because it built up my expectations for Final Fantasy. I enjoyed 7. I thought 9 was adorably cute. 10 and 10-2 were cool, but I just didn't get as attached to the characters. And then I played one of the other ones. That was it 12? I can't remember.
12 was like the one with the more MMO style combat.
Yeah, that lost me. That's where I got lost.
Yep.
But 15 I have to pick up soon.
Yeah.
I was actually a little late to Final Fantasy. So the first one I technically played was 6, but I didn't appreciate it at the time because I was a dumb kid and didn't really know what I had in front of me. And so the first one I played properly was 9. And I would say that actually maybe 10 is my favorite that I have played. I did like the characters, and some old school Final Fantasy fans criticize it for being the first one that gets a little bit linear, doesn't have as much of an open world. But I really like the story and the characters and the music in it, so that's probably my favorite.
Yeah, I've played most of the middle ones. Like I haven't played a lot of the ones that sort of kick off the teens. Like Final Fantasy 15 is the first one I picked up in a number of years. I did play 10. I'm pretty sure I played 11.
As the online one.
Oh, no, I wouldn't have then. I definitely stopped at 10 then, yeah. So there's been a bit of a gap there. And I have played most of the early ones. I think there's a couple of gaps amongst the first 6 because there's a bit of weirdness with the numbering conventions there.
Yeah, definitely.
So I can never quite recall which ones I haven't played. I started with 7. Like 7 was the first one that I actually played in terms of getting introduced to the franchise as a whole, and I love the shit out of 7 for every reason that it's so popular worldwide. The characters that drive that story in particular are just fantastic, and the imagery of the high tech sort of city as well, which forms the crux of a big part of the story in that world, was really, really cool. But my favourite in terms of actual game mechanics was probably 9 because, and you're not going to be surprised about this at all, but there's one feature in Final Fantasy 9 that I love the shit out of, and it's the in-game card game Tetramaster.
Yeah.
Of course.
Oh, so fun. Like just running around and trying to win all those cards from the different characters in the game.
I don't think I played it.
It was so good, Jam. Like, you got no idea. The mechanics
What
for
was
that
the
game
one
are
in
nuts.
8? What was the card game in 8 called?
Oh,
I don't think-
I did play
Dragon
that.
something?
I don't think 8 had a card game. It had Blitzball instead.
It did.
No, 10 had Blitzball.
Oh.
8 definitely had a card game.
Yeah, I'm Googling
Can't
it.
remember what it's called though.
100% did, because I did make an effort to try and collect those ones.
Yeah. There's been a few in each of them. There's lots of little mini games in a lot of the Final Fantasies. There's the whole in 7. There's a whole area where the Chocobo races and all that sort of stuff is, and you can literally lose like tens of hours in that area of the game. So
Triple Triad is the one from FF8.
Yes.
Yep.
My Google skills failed.
Nice. So anyway, Jam, I interrupted you. What other stuff did you want to mention?
Oh, the other stuff I've played that I liked, Kingdom Hearts I've already mentioned. I really like Kingdom Hearts 1.
Mm-hmm.
Just the mix of Square Enix and Disney was perfect for me. Persona 5. So,
Yay.
Persona 5, Imogen, don't listen for 1 minute. I am in December. I am about to send my final calling card.
Mm-hmm.
So shit has gone down.
Awesome.
But I believe there's more to come. And I did the stretch of that last dungeon or palace. I actually did it in one hit. Most of it. So that was an epic journey. I used up so many items. Yeah, so I'm in love with this game. So this is probably going to top my list once I've finished it.
So you're still chipping away at that slowly, are you? You're going to get there in the end?
I'm so close. Yeah, no, I'm determined to get there in the next week or two.
I think Jam's a bit further along than Memo is at this point, so...
Oh, yes, definitely. A couple of others that I've played that I enjoyed, Lost Odyssey, which I never got super far in, but was quite fun. I always meant to get back to that. And Ni no Kuni for the same reason. It's adorable little game that I just haven't got back to.
That was the Studio Ghibli produced one.
Yeah. So that was really cool. That's about it for my experiences.
You want me to jump in next, Krishna, and you can wrap us up?
Yeah, you go ahead, Luke.
So, Final Fantasy we've already mentioned. That's the obvious stuff. I played a bunch of Secret of Mana when I was younger. Really enjoyed Secret of Mana. That was good fun. But there's one game in all of my childhood that stands out as probably my favourite JRPG of all time, and it's one that like a lot of people would probably not agree with because they've played better games. But this was it for me. Like it was just a really memorable game. Yeah, go for it.
It's not Pokemon, is it?
No, absolutely not. It is
Digimon.
actually Breath of Fire 2.
Right.
So Breath of Fire series, I think it had its ups and downs in terms of like how good each of the games were, but Breath of Fire 2 in particular just fucking blew me away at the time. Like it was probably my favorite game ever for a while, with the exception of Super Metroid, of course. That was always right up there. But it did a whole bunch of really cool things as a JRPG that I never really appreciated fully at the time, but looking back on now, it seems really clever. So it was very Final Fantasy-esque in the sort of, turn-based combat style, and, it had all the hallmarks of those sorts of games, like really mixed cast in terms of humans and, animal hybrid characters and that kind of thing. But it did a couple of things that I love. Like one was that it introduced one of the main sort of villains like super early on, like in one of the opening scenes, in a very similar way to they do with Ridley in Super Metroid. And I love that mechanic. Like we actually learn meet one of the big bad guys, not the final boss, just one of the big sort of super bosses, sort of at the very beginning of the game. And then you've got this anticipation throughout the entire story where you're leading back to that point where you're going to run into them again. It was introduced really, really well. But there was also some really cool mechanics in this one. Like there was a feature where you could actually merge characters together using shamans, where you can actually fuse them together and sort of blend their abilities in battle. The mechanic behind that was really cool. But yeah, just some of the sub-stories in this game were just nuts. Like your main character was sort of descended from dragons, and later on could actually pick up abilities where he transforms into one. And eventually you're sort of leading up towards like taking on a god. And the final battle when you take this thing on is just one of the biggest boss fights I can possibly remember in terms of like the amount of assets that they fit on screen. Like you actually have to move around to see this entire thing. It's just nuts. But it has that real climactic feeling of like against ridiculous odds that you're fighting, and it really swept me up in the whole theme of the thing. It was great. So yeah, Breath of Fire 2. Nice. If you can ever hunt that down, I recommend it. It's a really good game. Yeah. But that's probably the main ones I can recall. I mean, could we count South Park Stick of Truth?
No.
Do you think that's a JRPG? It kind of...
I mean, it's party-based, it has inventory management, it has turn-based combat,
not Japanese.
it has side quests.
Yeah.
it ticks a lot of the boxes.
It's an RPG.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. Like, I think on paper it probably looks like it, but it just doesn't feel like it. So, yeah.
Yeah, inspired by JRPGs, but not one itself.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so now I'll sit back and listen to all of the good games that I'm going to have to go and play.
No, look, I do need to admit up front that I did come quite late to JRPGs. So I have, in my adult life, gone back and played a lot of the classics, but many people consider the Super Nintendo, PlayStation 1 as the golden era of JRPGs, and I actually wasn't into them at the time. I think maybe I was too young or didn't have the right exposure, but it was really only from PlayStation 2 onwards that I started getting into the genre, and most of my favorites have actually been from the last 10 years, not the classic ones from Age of Yore. So I'd say like some of my favorites, definitely Persona 4, and particularly Persona 4 The Golden is quite possibly my favorite game of all time, or definitely in my top 3 games of all time.
I have to get that.
Yeah, I do rate it over 5, as amazing as 5 was.
Wow.
Also, Xenoblade Chronicles for the Nintendo Wii. I actually really love that game too. And Bravely Default, the game I mentioned before, the 3DS one. That is a fantastic game. I do count the Pokemon series as JRPGs. They're quite simple, but they have most of the boxes ticked.
The thing for the Pokemon games for me, where I sort of fall on them as JRPGs, is I think they're fantastic games, and I really enjoy the battling and collecting systems in them, but I couldn't really give a crap about the story, and that kind of breaks it for me in terms of considering them on the same level as some of the other JRPGs.
Yeah. I get that. It is a weird inclusion. It's more of a spin-off of the main JRPG sort of style.
Yeah.
But I want to give them a shout out.
Definitely. I mean, the battle mechanics are almost second to none, so yeah.
Yeah. Shin Megami Tensei 4, which is another 3DS game, which is the original franchise that Persona spun off from. But Shin Megami Tensei 4 is a fantastic game as well.
So question for you with regards to Persona 2 that you mentioned earlier during the quiz. Was that at the time that it had adopted the Persona name after being Shin Megami Tensei, or was that sort of happening at the same time?
That was the first one that was released under the name Persona. So Persona 1 was like Shin Megami Tensei If, I think it was called, Persona If, but it was basically simultaneously Shin Megami Tensei and the first Persona game.
Right.
And then Persona 2 was the first one that dropped Shin Megami Tensei in its name and just released as Persona 2.
Gotcha. All right. That makes sense.
I'd also include Super Mario RPG in my favorites too. That's a fantastic game. And now this is another debatable one, but I think it has a lot in common with JRPGs, even though it's Western developed, and that's actually Undertale.
No.
I think that Undertale is in many ways, it's inspired heavily by Earthbound, and I think Earthbound, most people agree, is a JRPG. So I'd rate Undertale too.
Interesting.
But yeah, I mean, a lot of the classics from the so-called Golden Age I didn't play, like the Suikoden, Secret of Mana. I haven't actually played Chrono Trigger. So yeah, there's quite a few there that I still need to make up for, but most of my favorites are a bit more modern.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Chrono Trigger is definitely on my list. I will hit that at some point in the not too distant future. And Undertale I need to as well before Imogen finishes Ori and the Blind Forest. So I've probably got about a year left on that clock.
Well, that's coming out on PS4 soon as well, so you might be able to pick it up there.
I've got it on PC already. I'll probably just continue with the save game I've got already and get through
Just
it.
procrastinating.
Yeah, I haven't hit the point in that game where it's grabbed me yet. Like I've played the opening parts of it and enjoyed it to a point.
I'm the same dude.
Yeah.
I have not picked it up again.
It's a slow burn, it really is, but it's a game, Undertale's a game where the ending is an amazing payoff. But I do definitely admit that it's not for a certain group of people. Like there are people who just sort of won't buy into the message at the end and it won't grab them. I've had a similar experience recently. I compare it a lot to Nier Automata, which is a game where a lot of people try it out and the combat just feels a bit, it's fun, but nothing special, and the story doesn't seem to be anything special. But when you get to the end of that game, what it does thematically and the way it plays with genre conventions is amazing. And Undertale is the same way, where it's really the way it breaks your expectation and subverts, the genre. That's what really gets it going. But other people aren't really into that sort of thing, so...
Yep, no, that's fair. We'll see. I'll definitely get through it. It's one that I feel I need to just to see it for sure. And I don't want to go on YouTube the ending. I think that would be a complete waste. So,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, sweet. All right, well, thanks for hopping on and chatting cool games with us again tonight, Christian. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you back on.
No, it's been absolutely a pleasure to be here.
Nice.
Anytime.
Absolutely. And we'll plug you into the calendar at some point in the near future to do something else fun for sure.
Do more true or false.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that needs to become the regular feature, I think.
Yep, TM. That's my trademark on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. But in the meantime, baseline expectation, you need to jump on and do some Battlegrounds with us. I think that needs to be a thing in the very near future.
Yes.
Yep, sounds good.
Sure.
We'll do that for sure.
Awesome.
And we'll accidentally not have space for Luke. Or I'll accidentally shit him in the face again.
Oh, yeah. No, I
You'll get banned. Player unknown will come in and ban you.
It's a genuine accident, like the first time was.
Oh, nice.
I promise.
Yeah, sure. All right, well, anyone listening tonight, hope you enjoyed the show. And if you want to let us know what your own JRPG recommendations are, then hit us up at the usual sources. So you can mail us at mail@partyloaded.com. We're on Facebook, of course. Just search for Party Loaded. We're at Party Loaded Show on Twitter. You can find us on iTunes and, of course, on YouTube at Channel Endgame, which is youtube.com/channelendgame. You hit us up and find all of our video content there, which of course includes every episode of the podcast after it goes up on iTunes. So yeah, awesome. So a bunch of stuff to actually keep us occupied the next week. I think Dry July has, sort of reached maybe towards its conclusion. There's actually some interesting stuff happening now, not the least of which is more Destiny. So without further ado, let's hop off and get into some of that action. What do you say, Jam? You keen?
Sounds good.
Let's do it. All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you again next time. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
The Party Loaded podcast is a Channel Endgame production. For this and more great gaming content, bookmark channelendgame.com.